Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on Facebook Live. My name is Dr. Matthew Pogorski. I'm a clinical neuropsychologist in the Learning and Development Center here at the Child Mind Institute. And this morning we are talking all about dyslexia and how to help children with dyslexia during this time. This is sort of a part two. We had a part one 2 weeks ago. Which was great, and we got a lot of great questions, and people were super engaged and interested, and I think a lot of folks out there want to know how to help kids with dyslexia right now. So the response was amazing, and we loved it, and so we're like, let's do a part two. So I'm super happy to be here this morning and really excited to be able to answer all your questions. And that's sort of the idea with this Facebook Live format, is to answer your questions live in real time. So if you guys have questions about this stuff, please keep them coming. I'm here for the next half hour to answer any questions that you may have about dyslexia and how to work with kids with dyslexia. I'm also going to share a ton of resources. I love being able to give out some resources, and dyslexia is one of those things that I have amassed a lot of different resources, information on, and so I'm going to share a lot of great stuff that you can access at home if you're a parent and do with your kids, or if you're a teacher and you're sort of wondering, like, how do I help kids that I'm working with right now who have dyslexia and they're out of school, and what can I do? I'm going to share with you guys a ton of amazing resources that you can access. So actually, first, one of the best resources that you can actually go to find out more about what dyslexia is and how to help kids with dyslexia, you can go straight to our website, childmind.org. We have a guide for dyslexia for parents, for teachers, and those guides have a lot of great information. So if you just go to our website, childmind.org, we have some great guides on dyslexia. The other thing I'm actually going to, for all of our listeners and everyone who's with us this morning, I'm going to give you a sneak peek into a parent reading intervention program that myself and a couple of other colleagues in the Learning and Development Center here at the Child Mind Institute have been developing over the past couple of weeks, and it is almost ready to be delivered online. But I want to share with you guys this morning, give you a little bit of sneak peek about what we have in store. So this is going to be able to help parents and teachers and folks out there understand dyslexia better and understand what to do. So you guys are going to get a little bit of a sneak peek of that program. Are we good? Yeah. Okay. So this is a little bit of a sneak peek of what we got going. So, and this is a good, I think, introduction this morning. We can talk about what is dyslexia, and what we know about dyslexia is it's a language-based learning difficulty. So for many years, and I think a lot of people still think dyslexia is this thing where visually the words are all like swirling around on the page, and people are reading from right to left instead of left to right, and it makes you sort of think, oh, there's something going on visually. And actually what we know is that even though people with dyslexia have those experiences sometimes of words moving on the page and it's hard for them to read and see the words on the page, what we actually know about dyslexia is it's a language-based learning difficulty. So it actually has to do with these different parts of the brain that are responsible for different aspects of language. And what we know about dyslexia is it is defined as poor basic literacy skills relative to age expectations. We know in dyslexia from all the research that's been conducted that there are structural and functional differences in the brain's reading network, which we'll show you in a little bit. And what we often see in individuals with dyslexia while they're reading, what we see is that they have these core weaknesses in phonological processing, in phonological development. And phonological processing, phonological development is basically it's our ability to understand and manipulate sounds in language, okay? And that is the core deficit that gets in the way in dyslexia. And what we know is that as humans, we are actually hardwired for language. We are born with these innate language capacities. So we're born with the ability to have conversations, to communicate our thoughts and ideas, for us to understand what people are telling us. We have these built-in language capacities, but we are not hardwired for reading. Reading is actually a relatively, in the scale of evolution, a new skill. And so reading is not something we're born with. Reading is something that we need to learn and that people need to teach us in order to be able to read, which is a really amazing thing. So language is natural. We're born with it, but reading is not. And as the Shaywitzes, Dr. Shaywitz up at Yale says, speaking is natural, reading is not. And that really is so important to understand. And what we know from the research that's been conducted on dyslexia is that it's due to deficits in the phonological module that gets in the way of this skill called phonological awareness, which is basically, again, this ability to be aware of and manipulate sounds in spoken language. And what we know about phonological awareness, it is actually crucial for unlocking the code to learn how to read. So to become good, skilled, fluent readers, we have to have good phonological awareness. Interestingly, what we see, we do evaluations for dyslexia. One of the core weaknesses we see that really gets in the way of kids reading is weaknesses in phonological awareness, and we actually have tests that look exactly at that skill. What we know about the dyslexic brain also is that's a little bit different from a typical reader brain. And in kids that have typical reading abilities, and adults as well, there are these different areas of the brain that light up while we read. And so all of these areas are on the left side of the brain, though there is some right hemisphere activation too, but the majority of the activation we see is on the left side of the brain where language is housed. And what we see is that in typical readers, they activate all these different parts of the brain in the front of the left hemisphere, in the back especially, to be able to analyze sounds and words. And it comes together to form these representations so that when we read words on a page, it comes easily and fluently. But in kids with dyslexia and adults with dyslexia, we see those back areas of the brain just don't light up nearly as much, and there's not as much activation there, which makes reading really challenging for them. So that's just a sneak peek of some of our slides that we have for this parent reading intervention. There's a lot more content that is going to be coming out, and that reading intervention is actually going to focus a lot on not only what dyslexia is and how do we teach kids how to read, and what's the science of reading that we've learned about in our research, but also it's going to have different modules that teach parents on what they can do at home to work on specific skills that are important for reading. So right now, that's just a sneak peek. Please stay tuned. We're going to have that hopefully up and running in the next couple of weeks, and that's going to be something that we want to be able to offer folks. So we do have our first question coming in from Carolyn. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for joining us this morning on Facebook Live and asking this great question. So Carolyn asks, how do I teach my autistic daughter to read? How can I tell if she understands? Carolyn, that's a really great question. Thank you so much. So I would love to gather some more information. Of course, like, Carolyn, how old is your daughter first? Because what we know is that kids aren't expected to read just naturally, like as soon as they're born, right? What we know, again, is that language is sort of hardwired, it's natural, but kids take time to read, and there's actually a progression of skills that happen in reading. And what we see is that early on in development, kids, first, they're just like looking at books, and what they have to do is become aware of, we actually call this skill print awareness. Like, for instance, like, are we holding the book the right way? Knowing that pictures are parts of books and they communicate ideas, and then a whole host of other skills begin to develop. But oh, Carolyn, 13 years old. Okay, so what you could do, Carolyn, to find out if your autistic daughter, how you can teach her to read. If she is struggling with reading as is, then I think really, honestly, the first step is to try and get an evaluation to really better understand what specific struggles she might be experiencing, because that can really give us a detailed understanding of what aspect of reading, because there's a few different kinds and we want to be able to get to the specific aspect that she may be struggling with. But if you just want to see if she can understand what she is reading right now, you can just have a conversation and ask her questions about the books that she's reading. Oftentimes, actually facilitating conversations about books that kids are reading, we're actually using different cognitive skills when we're having those discussions about what we're reading. And you can ask questions both about just like details from the text, like very concrete things like what's the character's name in the story, where are the characters living, things like that, just very detailed, concrete details. Kids with autism, what we see sometimes, especially those who are high functioning, is that even though sometimes when they're reading, they can pick out those concrete details, sometimes they struggle with making inferences and sort of understanding the main ideas. And they have trouble with really sort of getting to like the big picture or understanding like characters' feelings or sort of the subplots and different metaphors and analogies. So you might want to ask some questions about that too. You can ask your daughter, what is the main idea of the story? What do you think these characters are feeling? What do you think would happen next? Even if the story didn't give it to you. And actually that can clue you in a little bit to see if she's still able to read and gain the details, but maybe having trouble abstracting information, extrapolating and making those inferences, which we do see often in children with autism. But just to go back, I think an evaluation, if you're concerned about your daughter's reading, could be really helpful. And actually, that's going to give me a second to do a little bit of a shameless plug. So the Child Mind Institute, we are actually now offering tele-assessments, virtual assessments that we can do for dyslexia, for other learning conditions. So if you're a parent, you're listening, or a teacher, and you're tuned in this morning and you're interested in having an evaluation done remotely, we actually, our team at the Child Mind Institute, our neuropsych team, which I'm part of, we've actually developed this protocol for being able to do evaluations remotely. You can actually find that information by going to our website, childmind.org, and I'm sure we'll post it in the comments section there as well, a link to how you can get some more information about an evaluation. So Carolyn, thanks so much for your question. I'm going to move on to the next question from Sophia. Sophia, thank you so much for joining us this morning, for being part of this. So Sophia, you asked, can a loss of words or forgetting words be a sign of dyslexia in a 6-year-old? Yeah, that's a great question. So it's hard to say exactly, but if you see that, for instance, you're reading with your child one day and they seem to be picking up a lot of the words that they're reading, but then the next day it's like seeing the page all over again, and they're really struggling with being able to sound out and decode decode words, even ones they've seen already. That could definitely be a sign of dyslexia. What we see in dyslexia actually is that kids need a lot of repetition, and they need of the same words, and they need a lot of repetition of working on certain skills. And in kids with dyslexia, again, what we see is these weaknesses in phonological processing. And that really gets in the way of kids' ability to sound out and decode new words. That is the core deficit in dyslexia. And so what happens in some kids with dyslexia is that it just takes a lot more repetitions for them to break down the sounds of words and take that phonological code, and for them to access it quickly when they see a word. That can be hard for them too. So if you're seeing that your child, you're reading with them one day and they're able to go through a story, and then the next day as you're reading with them again, they're still struggling with being able to sound out and break down words or remember how words sound, that could be a sign of dyslexia for sure. On the other hand, what we do see sometimes is some kids have language regression that could be separate from dyslexia, and that could be a sign of some other things. So again, it's really important if you are a parent, you're just sort of getting a feeling in your gut like something's not right. Like, whether you have another child who sort of has been able to go through reading without a problem, or you see other kids in your child's classroom sort of progressing, and you just have a certain feeling like something's not right. This just doesn't seem like what should be happening. Then I think trust your gut. You can always gather more information, get an evaluation, just try to get more information about what's going on. But thank you for your question this morning, Sophia. It's a great question. So I'm going to take a quick breath and just do a step back for a second. So my name is Dr. Matthew Pogorski. I'm a clinical neuropsychologist here at the Child Mind Institute. And this morning we're talking about dyslexia. We got another great question from Michelle. Thank you, Michelle, for your question this morning. How do you feel about journaling and reading individual books versus traditional RADD exchange for my 9-year-old son? So I'm going to be totally honest. I don't know traditional RADD exchange. Michelle, would you be able to elaborate on that in the meantime? Just because that's something in my experience, I've never heard before, but of course I'd love to know more to be able to answer your question. In the meantime, I'm actually going to share a couple of resources if you're a parent or a teacher watching this and you want to get some more information about dyslexia and how to work with kids with dyslexia. I'm going to give a couple shout outs to a couple different great resources you can access. So one of my favorite resources that's out there and actually just got released about a month ago is this book called Overcoming Dyslexia. And that's written by a Yale neuroscientist and amazing researcher. Her name is Dr. Sally Shaywitz, spelled Shaywitz. The book is called Overcoming Dyslexia by Dr. Sally Shaywitz. The second edition just came out about a month ago. It is amazing. I have my copy sitting right here, and it's got a lot of, actually I could probably show it here. It's got a lot of great resources on. It explains dyslexia really well. It explains what you can do as a parent at home to help your child with dyslexia, and it is a great resource. I'm not getting any compensation or royalties for sharing this morning. I just think it's an amazing book. It's one that our field has really been interested in and has used as a resource for many years. And the second edition just came out a couple of weeks ago, so it's brand new. It's got great content. So Michelle, I didn't forget about you, but I'm going to just answer your question just for now and go on to the next question. And I'll come back to you, though, after. So Annette asks, what's the best way to have a child evaluated? It seems like we've gone a ton. We spent a ton and gone to diagnosis for mild dyslexia. Matching characters like a movie, drawing pictures, and sing-alongs have helped. Definitely. So the best way to have a child evaluated for dyslexia is really, in my opinion, is to have a very comprehensive evaluation done by a psychologist or a neuropsychologist who really understands all these different abilities that are important for being able to read. And so when we think about dyslexia, think about a good dyslexia evaluation, we're going to think about a couple different skills that we want to test for. The first thing that we're always going to want to test for and evaluate is the skill phonological awareness. And we actually have tests that look exactly at that skill. Some of the names of tests that can be used and that as parents or teachers you should be aware of, there's a test called the CTOP, CTOPP. That's a great test for phonological awareness. There are tests that also look at what's called accurate and fluent word recognition, and we want to make sure that kids can decode code fluently and read words fluently and with automaticity. And some tests that look at that, there's a test called the TOWRE, TOWRE, the test of word reading efficiency, and there's some other different tests in other batteries, word recognition, decoding fluency. We want to also look, how can kids read words and decode words on a page when there are no time constraints? We want to be able to look at oral reading fluency, how a kid reads out loud stories and passages, and how automatically and with good accuracy and pace they're reading. There's a test that looks at that called the GORT. We also ultimately want to look at a child's reading comprehension. Can they understand what they're reading? Because really the ultimate goal of reading is to understand what the story, what you're reading, so you can gain knowledge. And so that's going to go into an evaluation. So really an evaluation that looks at all those skills. And I, as a neuropsychologist, like to think about other skills as well, like different language skills. There's a a language-based skill that's important for reading called rapid automatic naming. That's something that we want to look at as well. So there's a lot of different types of skills, but for an evaluation, I would say you'd want to have somebody take a look at all these different skills, and you really want to also probably think about children with dyslexia. A lot of them have some difficulties with attention. Some have difficulties with executive functioning. So having some measures in there that can look at those skills can also be super important as well. So Michelle, I'm going back to your question. Thank you so much for responding. So restate, answer, detail. That's rad. So I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with that approach. I wish I had more information. I could answer your question more effectively, but I don't know too much about that approach. What I do know is that for kids with dyslexia, what they really need is interventions that are focused specifically on improving their phonological awareness and their phonics skills. And because that is really the core deficit there. And so what we need to do in children with dyslexia is help them unlock the code to be able to read words on a page by giving them systematic, explicit, direct, multisensory, cumulative phonics instruction. So there's an intervention methodology out there for kids with dyslexia called Orton-Gillingham. That's Orton-Gillingham, which is another word. And that is a reading-based methodology that we know works for kids with dyslexia that helps them learn how to read. There's also our field has really come a long way in understanding interventions for dyslexia. Really a big component in what kids with dyslexia need are what are called structured literacy interventions. Again, that's structured literacy interventions. And what that involves is teaching kids, again, these different language-based skills in a systematic, explicit, direct way. So if you're teaching language skills there's phonics programs being used that are not doing it explicitly and systematically, that's really not going to work oftentimes for kids with dyslexia. They really need very systematic, explicit phonics-based instruction. Orton-Gillingham is the name of a very tried and true methodology that incorporates a lot of multisensory techniques to help kids with dyslexia. And structured literacy interventions is another type of intervention. And Orton-Gillingham structured literacy sort of kind of hang together, but if you Google any of those interventions, they'll give you a lot more information about what these kids need in order to be able to learn how to read. One of my favorite websites that has a lot of great resources for parents and teachers in understanding dyslexia is from the International Dyslexia Association, IDA. If you Google them, IDA, International Dyslexia Association, they have a ton of amazing resources. They talk all about Orton-Gillingham. They talk about structured literacy intervention, and there's a lot of great information on that website. We have a couple more minutes left, so I'm actually going to talk about some other really great resources that I personally have found and love, and I think could be really great for both parents and teachers to access during this time of remote learning to help kids with dyslexia. So the Office of Elementary Education in Mississippi, actually. So Mississippi is actually the only state in the United States in the past, looking at the past NAEP data, which is basically a standardized assessment that's given across the country. Mississippi is the only state that really made gains in their kids' reading. And so the Office of Elementary Education Mississippi, if you Google them, they actually have these amazing parent guides on their website. It's called the Parent's Guide to Student Success. It's for kids in kindergarten through fourth grade, and it gives specific skills to work on, specific strategies to work on a bunch of different reading skills for kids, all the way from phonological awareness to phonics to reading fluency to comprehension. I would definitely recommend accessing those. That's probably the one resource that I found that's been so great for parents and teachers that they can use at home right now during this time. Another great program, if you have a child with dyslexia, you're looking for programs that they can actually do with specialists or tutors or do on their own online. Nessy, Nessy, is a great program for helping kids with dyslexia. If you Google Nessy, they have a ton of amazing programs that can help out. And if you're a parent right now and you're struggling to manage everything, Nessy may be a really good program to look at to help. Linda Mood Bell, which is another research evidence-based reading intervention, is one of my go-tos for virtual dyslexia remediation online. Again, that's Linda Mood Bell, 2 words. They have a lot of great programs, and they're an intensive program, and kids really make amazing gains through their programs, and they're very evidence-based and research-based, and I highly recommend them. If you're a parent or teacher, you just want to learn more about dyslexia, you want to learn more about the science of reading and how far we've come in understanding how kids learn how to read, how the brain learns to read, and you just want to start like digging and looking for more information, there's an amazing Facebook group actually called Science of Reading, What I Should Have Learned in College. And it's a Facebook group. It's got about 23,000 members. I looked online this morning. It has a group of professionals, educators, parents, teachers, really dedicated to understanding the science of reading and how to help kids with dyslexia. And it's a really great Facebook group. Again, Science of Reading, What I Should Have Learned in College. I would definitely recommend checking those folks out. Today, actually, there's an amazing organization called the Reading League, and they're based up in Syracuse, and they actually are hosting a virtual symposium today, starting this afternoon at 12 o'clock and goes into tomorrow as well. I'm definitely going to be on it and tuning in. It's virtual. You just have to pay $10 as a donation to the organization. And they have these amazing speakers who are going to be talking all about dyslexia and the science of reading. I highly recommend, if you're a parent or a teacher and you have time, and I know right now is such a busy time, but if you do have the time and you want to check that out, I highly recommend it. Again, that's the Reading League, and they have a virtual symposium today. It's $10, got a lot of great presenters, really the experts, top experts in the field who are going to be presenting, and it's just amazing that we have this opportunity to hear them speak. If you're a parent and you're looking for some controlled decodable books, which are books that have very predictable sound, vowel patterns and phonics patterns. There's a couple of different organizations and companies out there that are offering their books for free or for very, very low cost right now. So there's 3 companies. One is Flyleaf, the other is called Spire, and the last one is Oxford Owl. Again, that's Flyleaf, Spire, and Oxford Owl. And they have free decodable and phonics books. And they're just beautiful and really great things. You can download them onto your computer. You can print them out. If you're a parent at home, you're looking for some free decodable and phonics books. If you check out any of those websites or groups, they have those freely available on their website. If you're also just interested in learning more about the science of reading and dyslexia, I actually highly recommend visiting the Decoding Dyslexia Rhode Island website. They have a ton of amazing resources on there for parents and for teachers. Again, that's Decoding Dyslexia, which is this parent-based grassroots organization that's really done amazing work nationwide for families and kids with dyslexia. And the Rhode Island branch has their own website, if you Google them, that has a ton of free resources on there for both parents and teachers. So there's really a lot of great stuff out there right now. I hope you guys check out those resources. And of course, if you have any questions or any additional thoughts, you can leave them in the comments. You can email us. We're here to help you right now. This is such a difficult time for parents and for teachers trying to figure out the landscape and how do we help these kids. But really, the thing that I've been seeing a lot of is that there's just a lot of also amazing organizations that are offering their resources for free. And now can be a really good time as a parent or a teacher to educate yourself and to get these resources and just start to learn more. And again, this is a gradual process. No one's expecting you to understand or learn or do this stuff overnight, but just getting started and starting to understand this, these different things can be super helpful. So I highly encourage checking out some of those resources. So we've got about 1 minute left. I just want to say thank you to everybody who joined us this morning. Thank you so much to all the teachers, all the parents, all the frontline workers, all the people who are helping us and really doing amazing work with families and kids and parents. At the Child Mind Institute, we're here to continue to help you and support you as much as we can by having these discussions, by posting resources on our website, childmind.org. And we're going to keep posting stuff, so keep checking back on our website. We have a lot of great content coming out from all the different clinical teams. Thank you so much again. It was a pleasure being on this morning. And please stay safe, stay healthy, and I look forward to being back here soon. Thank you so much.